This is a conversation with Shehnaz Patel. She's an actor and theatre legend in Mumbai, popularly known for her roles in the plays Love Letters and Class of 84, along with movies like Black, Guzarish, Talash, and Rockstar. In this conversation, we discuss the magic of theatre, the magic of acting, what drew her in. She provides an acting 101 masterclass. What are the different techniques, tips, tricks, different tools that different actors can use to build their characters? How do you read a script for clues? How do you find the soul of a character? We dissect the work of Sanjay Leela Bhansali, what makes him special. Also talk about what actors like Aishwarya Rai, Amitabh Bachchan and Hrithik Roshan do well that we can all learn from. And we also explore the relationship between theatre and the film industry in Mumbai. And now, it's no time.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Girish Karnad had once said, theatre is not a profession, it's a way of understanding the world. You've often said in the past that you were born in theatre. Your parents met in theatre. They had a theatre romance. You grew up backstage. You used to play hide and seek among the props backstage. You used to handle programs on the streets. So you're one of the few people where it's fair to say, I think theatre's in your blood.
Yes.
So I have to start off by asking you, what is the magic of theatre, the magic of acting? When you look back now, what was so appealing about it? What was so attractive about it?
I think the great thing about growing up in a theatre family is we all as kids love to play, right? I mean, we can be lost in playing with this for hours on end. We love playing Doctor and, any of those games where we, you watch kids play and you call them for khana and, you'll have to say, hey, come on, and then the kid suddenly has a start because they're so lost in their imagination. So for me, it was this huge stage, which was like a playground and a great place to just let your imagination go wild. So it just draws you in, it sucks you in, that whole world of make-believe. Because as kids, when we're trying to figure out the world, we go into make-believe to help us understand the world a little better.
When did this realization hit you? From your first time on stage, playing the very complex role of Jack in the Box, to your first professional play, Diary of Anne Frank. Yeah. Was there any point in this timeline where you had this revelation of the meaning of theatre and you decided this is what I want to do?
No, there was no revelation point because I was, just gradually just doing it. It was like, it's like doctors' kids, you assume that they may want to become a doctor, lawyers' kids become lawyers. I think it was like that in our family. We were all three of us kids, my brother, my sister and me. We all did theatre in school. So we were all enjoying it thoroughly. All our, dinner discussions were around theatre. My parents' friends were all from the theatre. So you just like osmosis just get sucked into that world, So it's very different when you're from outside and you say, like you have this aha moment that this is, my calling. I just assumed this was my calling from when I was very young. And the only difference is when you decide if you want to do it as a career, like this is what I'm going to do. That was a struggle because that was through college. I even went off thinking I'll do my master's in psychology and, all these other things. I'll go off to JNU and study and all this other stuff was like, coming in the way because you know how difficult a career in theatre is. So to take that decision, and I never really took the decision because I worked for, many other companies while I was pursuing theatre. I had a whole other life. But that this will be a huge chunk of my life was something I kind of took for granted,
I think you're understanding it because when your parents wanted to launch you, there was a showdown at home and you said there's this particular way you want to do things.
Yes.
So clearly there's some vision you had or some intentionality.
Yeah, I mean, but your question was, do I want to be an actor? That was never, ever, there was no question mark around that. I always knew I wanted to act. But that whether I do it with my parents or I do it on my own, that was the struggle. Because it's like in the film industry, right? A parent wants to launch their kid if they want to be in that profession. It was the same thing with my parents. I think the intention was so pure that my dad was a producer, so we'll produce a play and we'll launch you. And I knew I didn't want to do that because I had to find my own path. I knew that from a very young age. I was a hyper independent child. So it made no sense to my parents. So that was the showdown. But I luckily found my own tribe, and was able to, sort of formulate my own journey. And then once I'd started working with my own people, then my friends went on to produce shows for my dad in which I acted in. So then it all became okay. But that thing of being launched by somebody, I didn't want that. I had to find, my own 2 feet. I had to land on my own 2 feet.
I think you've taken a fascinating journey. Let's explore it. With a masterclass, the premise is, let's assume मुझे एक actor बनना है. मैं आपके पास आया हूँ. You're one of the finest actors in theatre and a teacher as well. So today, I'm your student for the next hour. I just want to pick your brains on theatre and acting techniques and hopefully dissect a few things that might help me launch this career. Let's start with reading a script. Let's assume that I've got a role and I've got a script in front of me. And you've said in the past that you often like to read the script for clues. This was particularly helpful when you were working on Blackbird with Akash Khurana because the text was quite difficult. You've said that the sentences were not completed or there were no full stops. So it's hard to tell what are incomplete thoughts. So where does the sentence end? What's overlapping? So have you devised, let's say, a list of clues or let's say an engine that you use every time you get a script? Is there something particular you look for? And then how does it help you learn more about the character?
So what I would do is, if it's a good script, it has to be a good script. Okay. Yeah. If it's a good script, I believe that everything that you want to know about your character is in there and you just need to find it. So it's very simple. I mean, and it's not something that I have devised. It's it exists. It's an old acting technique. So you look for everything in the script which are facts. Now, let's say you're the character. How old are you? Where were you born? Which city are you from? Or town are you from? Village are you from? Basically, understanding your entire background. Understanding what do you do as a profession. Are you in finance or are you in science? What is it? So you really look for everything that's a fact. And by fact, I mean, there's no questioning it. This is a fact. I'm, 23 years old is a fact. I'm a woman is a fact. My parents are alive is a fact, right? So we make a list of everything that's facts. Then we look for everything that I say about myself, which might be there, and normally it is there, which is, I tend to snap. What can I do? Is the line. So okay, she's saying that she tends to snap. So obviously maybe she has a bit of a temper. She's not able to control that. You look for, or if you realize, she laughs a lot. Maybe that's something like an idea of how does she interpret the world? How does she, how does she look at the world?
Is this the character's appraisal of themselves or is it you reading into what the character
No, normally it'll be there in the lines.
They are announcing it in themselves.
Yes,
okay.
It's something that your character is saying about themselves, right? So you make a list of all that, like everything the character says about themselves. So for example, if the character says things about other people in the play or not in the play, for example, the character says, I really dislike my dad, right? So okay, you make a list saying she dislikes her dad. She is very close to her mom. Everything that she says in the play, you make a list about people who are in the play or other people who you never see on stage, but, make up her world. And then you make a list of everything everyone else says about you. Because then how is the world seeing you? Which again gives you clues as to who this person may be.
And that may be a conflict.
That, of course, it could easily be a conflict. So so it's like a map, and it takes time because every time you read it, you will come up with new clues. And I just keep making notes and notes and notes and notes. I just write exactly what is on the page. I don't try to interpret it first. I just make a list of everything that the playwright is already telling me. Because the playwright knows these people, right? It's his world that he's put on the page. And what I think my simplest job as an actor is to present to the world what the playwright has written. I am the conduit to get the story across to an audience. That's my basic job, right? Is to take these words, make them my own, but serve him or her, the person who wrote that play. Right? So I feel everything that you need to know is there. Just look for it. So that would be my first go-to. Then, of course, if it's set in a particular period, or it's set in a world that I don't know, or it's set at a particular political time or historical time, you need to do the research. You need to find out more about, what were women like at that time.
This is beyond the script now.
Beyond the
external
script.
research.
Yeah. So you just, and I love that. I love the research part of it. If I'm playing a scientist on stage and I'm talking about, whatever, some discovery, then I need to be able to know that, even vaguely in layman's terms. I need to be able to understand the concepts that are being put across so that they come across as believable.
Does it show if you understand the concept or not?
I think it shows if you don't understand
Really?
the concept. Yeah. I mean, you can, of course, we can all pretend, and we do pretend anyway. I mean, acting is pretense, but you just feel more confident about what you're saying, and you don't, you'll never muddle the lines if you know exactly what you're saying, right? We should not say anything that we are not sure of. It's something that I think as an audience, you can immediately make out if a person actually knows what they're saying or not. I mean, even in life, right? People who are bullshitting us, we know immediately, right? Somebody's making up some big yarn that they don't know in detail. Even in friendly conversations, if somebody who's not politically aware on a subject and suddenly starts talking yarn that they may have read but haven't really absorbed, Similarly, an audience is very clever. An audience
But
picks
actors are
up
trained,
everything.
to make you believe what doesn't exist. Yeah.
But why shouldn't you know what you're saying? You really should. If you don't understand a word, you can't say it unless you go and you go open that dictionary and find out what it means, right? And how to pronounce it. So I mean, at least I believe that. So I do a lot of research. And then, of course, I think a lot of what you will develop will happen on the floor in the rehearsal room, which is where we play. And if you have a good director, then the director is able to push you to discover more and more and more as the rehearsals proceed. And then, of course, there's the external life of the character, which means how do I talk? How do I move? How do I walk? What is my rhythm? We all have a rhythm. Like,
a sur.
Yeah. And just now when you were kind of said, I mean, there's a rhythm about you, which is a little, like it's got an active rhythm, I don't know whether you're a restless person in life, but that's what I picked up like right now. So if I had to play you, then I need to find that restless energy, which means what's happening in my mind. Is my mind going to 5 different things at one time? What's happening in my body? Is my body a little more wired than a person who's very chilled and laid back, right? So those are things that we can, they can also be your into a character. Yes, I like to do my research, but sometimes that may not translate into the way I'm playing it. So sometimes an external may also work. I mean, I find shoes really, really helpful to know what are my shoes on stage.
Shoes?
Yes,
Jute.
shoes, jute.
Okay, what does that mean?
Because think about it, if you wear Keds and you wear flip-flops, doesn't your body
what are you conveying
change?
about
Doesn't it change? Right? You're a very different person when you're in your rubber chappals, And you're a very different person when there's a certain jumpiness that comes into you when you're in Keds, right? And there's a completely different thing when you're in formal shoes, right? So what does my character wear in the play? I'm quite paranoid about it, and I like to, if I'm not happy with what the production has found, then I will go out and find my own, because I feel it makes a difference to my physicality. If I've got to be a really bouncy, energetic kind of person, then I need shoes which help me with that. If you bring me something that's really tight and uncomfortable, or even not tight, but just doesn't give me the feel of this person, then it won't work. So I will go out and, try different till I find it. And I just
So
know it
interesting, right?
works. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I want to explore these different accessories, these trinkets that you can add to a role. Let's take your character in Talash.
Okay.
When you came on screen, I noticed that you had put so many little things into the character that was conveying so much without, even if you don't focus on what the character is saying. Right? The moment you enter, speak really fast, take breaths, sharp breaths, and then laughing out of place. Then obviously the big glasses,
Yeah.
the way you were walking, the way you were delivering the lines. Don't have to listen to what you're saying. Already you have conveyed that something's off, right?
Yeah.
So how do you play around with these different tools and these different, I guess, voice modulation, delivery, posture, gait? How can you tune these things to actually create a sense of mood, even if you don't focus on the dialogues?
With Talash, it was quite interesting because I feel I just knew her when I read it. I don't know where. I mean, I've not really analyzed it as to, who was I emulating, or maybe I'd observed someone who was like this, or I think she was quite a combination of a few people that I know. What was very comforting for me was she was Parsi. So immediately I could go into all the kooky Parsis that I know, and somewhere, but it was all subconscious. It was not something. It was not consciously planned, but because something when you know someone, then automatically I could, work on, oh, no, she would wear this. Oh, no, she would have these specs.
It just came to you.
Yeah. And then with the costume designer and the director, we kind of yeah, this works. This makes complete sense. I understand, they were listening to me because I feel I really knew her. And because she was from a world that I know, I knew how she would dress. I knew what, the kind of specs she would wear.
What was her sort?
I can't say like that. I can't.
Is it
It's
tough
difficult for me to describe it in words. Sometimes these things, they just come from you, and then you don't want to analyze it too much.
Is it just that character in particular? Most characters, you feel like the sur is hard to put into words. Let's say we'll take two other characters. Let's take your character in Black and Guzarish.
Yeah.
What is the sur of both of these characters?
I think in Black, I think in both actually. Because you're seeing the character more about, it's all about serving someone else, right? In Guzarish, she's the mother serving this daughter. So everything in Black. So everything is guided towards that. And if you find your strong maternal instinct, which every woman has, whether you're a mother or not, then it becomes the driver, right? And then you're just focusing on that, on delivering that. That's your drive. That's your mission through the course of the film.
Is that the same drive you have as a character in Rockstar? Because it feels like, on paper, feel like similar roles,
yeah,
right?
but it is, but they've such different daughters, So, and that vulnerability of a child and serving that child is very different.
Okay. Guzarish?
In Guzarish, again, it's about serving the man, and serving a friend, and making his dreams and his wishes come true. I think that's what drives that character. But of course, then you look at, who am I? I'm much stronger as a person in Guzarish than I am in Black. In the external frame, I think both are very strong women. But one is more sensitive and softer as a mother because of that relationship as such, So, and of course, it's so much to do with what's on paper in terms of the script and in terms of, what the director wants in the moment.
Let's go to the director then. Let's say today's class is it's a case study on Sanjay Leela Bhansali. How would you dissect him as a case study? What are some different things you picked up from him about filmmaking as a director that make him special?
I think the thing that for me obviously was that he made me really comfortable in a huge film set. I think that was the first thing. And what I loved about him was there was no difference between actors. There's no, I've got
hierarchy.
there's no hierarchy. So you've got superstars on set, and then you've got, just regular actors like me. You've got people playing even smaller parts than me. And everyone was given their due. Everyone was equally respected, and everyone mattered, So in a scene, whether you are absolutely standing at the door in the distance so you can't even really see what you're doing, to someone who's absolutely close up, they were both treated with equal respect, right? So when you make
Is that rare in movies? Because you've
Yes.
said in the past that you get the sense of hierarchy in
Oh, yeah.
cinema,
Yeah,
whereas
yeah.
theatre is a medium of equality.
No, I found it really rare working with him because I was treated with as much respect. My opinion mattered. I was, made to feel very special on both those films. And because you're made to feel really special, you also want to give your best. It's just human nature. If someone is saying, I know you can do it, I believe in you, I want you to do it, and pushing you to do it, something from within just, makes you be better than what you even thought you could do. And he has that ability. Also, he's such a stickler for perfection that he's never satisfied till he gets what he wants. And when you're on the mission with him, then you go with it. So even if it takes 40, 50 takes, you're okay doing it because you want him to realize this vision that he has of not just you, of the moment, of the scene, right? You are only part of it. So there were so many things. Plus, both films were made with so much love and joy and, camaraderie. Everyone got along really well. So the unit was great. The cast was great. When all those things kind of come together, then something magical happens, And with Black, we lost our entire set, right, to a fire. Everything mid-shoot was gone. Beautiful antiques, everything gone. And still the passion on that project was so huge from them that everything was rebuilt and we started, from where we were. We carried on from where we were. It's just amazing how they did that because you will never know when you're watching the film which scenes are
The
shot
old set,
pre-fire
yeah.
and which scenes are after. So we had an incredible team, and such lovely people to work with. Even Mr. Bachchan, I have huge, huge respect for him as a human being because he never makes anyone feel that, I'm this superstar and I come with all this experience. He will always ask you about you, So we would have long discussions about theatre in between setups because it was almost like him making me comfortable, so that I never feel that, oh my God, I'm in the same frame as Amitabh Bachchan and how am I going to perform? So from the beginning, he makes everyone really relaxed.
Let's extend this case study to all the other actors you worked with as well. Aishwarya Rai, Rani Mukherjee, Hrithik Roshan, such great actors.
Yeah.
What are some insights or tips you've picked up from them that will help me as an aspiring actor?
They're all, I think, extremely hardworking. I've seen Hrithik Roshan, he will watch his takes again and again and again on that monitor and fine-tune. He's never satisfied, And I think it's the case with the women as well. They, everyone wants to give their best, and there's discipline on the set. There's people come in knowing their lines, knowing what they're doing. And that's another thing with Sanjay. What he used to do is he would rehearse the scene that you're going to do the next day, the night before. So, you've already rehearsed it, you've kind of plotted it, and he's given you enough to think about. So even while you're home, you're sleeping subconsciously, it's all going on, right? So you come onto the set, not that, sometimes you can come onto a set and you're completely lost. कि camera कहाँ है, क्या scene है, कौन सा shot पहले कर रहे हैं. Here you knew everything. That this is what we will do. We will shoot the master. This is what we have plotted. Sure, things may change based on the lighting, but mota you know what what you're bringing into a scene, as we say. What is your emotional state when you walk into the scene? Everything. So I felt very comfortable because it's like a play. It's rehearsed.
Is it important to sleep on it? Like to have some ideas?
It's lovely to be able to sleep on things. Anyway, I think in life. Yeah. Because somewhere, subconsciously work is going on. It gives you time to like really imbibe the lines, maybe thoughts on what you want to do, ideas of how you could, perhaps do a moment. So all that is going on before you arrive on the set the next day.
The useful tips, I want to extend that to theatre as well. Habib Tanveer had once said, the stage belongs to the actor, not to the playwright or director. This is in contrast to what he just said, that you're just a medium to get the playwright's story across.
No, but what he says is right.
It's right.
Yeah.
He says it only lives in performance. And to an extent, I agree with Mr. Habib Tanveer. Not that I don't think it matters, in my opinion. But because there are many plays that I've watched which have left an imprint on me just because of the actor's performance. And because of this very elusive thing called stage presence. People often say that person had a great stage presence, but no one's able to dissect what makes stage presence. So like we just dissected your characters and added all these accessories and trinkets, I want to now identify what builds stage presence. How do you actually build it?
It's elusive.
Okay. Okay.
At least I think it's a bit elusive, because sometimes when I'm even watching a film, what is it that draws my eye to somebody? There's one character. They may not be the lead. They may be a supporting character, but your eye just keeps going to this
commanding
person.
presence.
Yeah. So I think it's people who are, completely there in the moment, right? If I'm completely there in the moment, responding to you like we are right now, I can feel it, when I'm sitting in the audience, that this communication is genuinely happening at this time. It's almost like you've managed to block everyone out, and you feel something alive is happening in that moment, and that draws us in, I think. I don't think it's about charisma or any of how attractive
your posture,
you look.
delivery,
I don't think it's
none
that.
of that makes a difference.
I don't think so. I think it's really this, that you own that space. You're not shying away from the space that you own. You're not asserting it. You're just owning it. Like you're there, right? And this, what we're doing now, this communication is happening. There's no other thought. Like, are they listening? Are they enjoying themselves? That person is yawning. None of that. There are shows which happen, which are like that, where we leave the stage and we just say, oh God, magic happened today. Something special happened, because we are just there. And we've been able to just lose ourselves
like a flow
into
state.
That world. Yeah, it is. I mean, theatre is considered a form of meditation for actors. Because in those 2 hours, I leave my life behind. And I mean, naturally, because it's a live medium, we come in with so much on a day of a show, right? Whether I'm unwell, someone at home is unwell, or, whatever other problems, and I mean, just our general daily life. And we leave that.
Once you had a high fever also, I think, was Iron that you were performing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So you leave all that for that period of time. And because we're absolutely here communicating, and see, it has to be a heightened state, because it's not like there is not some part of my brain that is not aware of the audience. I'm completely aware of the audience, right? I know, okay, there are latecomers coming in. I know a mobile phone has gone off.
Whispering happening.
Yeah, I know I have to find my mark where the light is going to come. I know all these things are going on simultaneously in my brain. I'll know if, you're like, it's looking like, oh my God, he's going to forget his line. How will I help him? All these things are also going on. At the same time, I could be in a completely high emotion scene where I'm weeping. It's all happening at the same time. Now, to be able to do that requires a kind of heightened reality that you're in, to be able to do all that. So it's a beautiful, it's a real high for actors when they're in that, as you're saying, flow state. When the show finishes, sometimes it stays with you. That feeling stays with you for quite a while.
It's very tough to train that feeling. Right?
It's very tough. Yeah. I think that's why I believe in terms of training, you will learn as much by experience as you will from formal training. And I think those two have to go hand in hand. Look at all of us. We never, I could not afford to go and study when I was young. We were just thrown into the deep end and we learned how to swim. And with every play that we did, we kind of understood, acha, ye hota hai, acting ye hai, kind of thing. We figured it out by making mistakes. And I studied much later in life. But for those first 12, 15 years of working, it was just kind of trying to figure it out. And experience, as we know in any profession, we learn through experience. And it's the same, with actors.
Do you need a natural spark or natural talent, or do you think anyone can just learn and become a very good actor?
I'm maybe controversial, but I believe you need a spark.
You have to be born with something.
It's just the spark of a talent. You see it. I work a lot with kids and I see it.
What is it? What is the spark?
There's just something about a kid whose imagination is much more vibrant than someone else's, who's fearless, who's again inhabiting the moment.
This can't be taught.
It can be, but I feel even there's just something there that, you have to, if you see it, you have to tap that in a child. It's just there. But that having been said, there are fabulous actors out there who may not have started with that spark, but have learned the profession.
So it's possible.
It is possible. But I do think I think with acting, it's not like ye 10 step kar lo, actor ban jaoge.
No?
No, it's not. No.
Interview over.
It's not. There's no tick these 10 things and you're definitely going to be a great actor. So then what is that 11th thing that's not on that list? And I think that's something that you bring. The level of your imagination, your creativity, your observation of humanity, your empathy. How do you teach empathy? And I think empathy is one of the greatest tools of an actor. To be able to empathize with anyone, any character, however evil that character may be. Right?
Important not to judge a character, right?
You can't judge a character.
In Rockstar, the director used a quote by Rumi, out beyond all ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field and I'll meet you there. It feels like all actors have to live in that field.
Yes, absolutely. How can I judge my character? I can't say, oh, I'm playing this horrible. I have to like my character, right? What my character chose to do may be horrible, right? But there are circumstances that led my character to do what they did. No one's born evil. So I have to go back and find that person, right? So I think it's those qualities you can tell people, you can guide students to go and imbibe these things, but it's not something that you can really, I can't teach this level of empathy, I can, of course, teach skill, and that's what you try to teach.
You said something very interesting when you were talking about this heightened state that you're in on stage. When you studied at the Royal Scottish Academy, one of your teachers asked you whether you've been performing live on stage for a while. When you said yes, he said it felt like you were almost anticipating the next dialogue, especially because you had been performing this play Love Letters for so many years. And his suggestion to you was you have to act surprised every single time you hear the dialogue. Tough to do, right? When you've been performing the same play.
I think it's true for both theatre and film, because when you reach, even in film, when you reach the, let's say, 30th take, how do you keep it? How do you keep it alive? There is I can't remember which film, but there was some film with Meryl Streep, and she had to cry, and for whatever reason, there was, issues with the camera movement or whatever, and she had to actually cry some 30, 40 times, So that is hard. But it's the same as you're saying on stage. You've done very good research, I have to say.
I don't do this. Hire people first. I don't have time.
Yeah, so I think it's the tricking yourself to believe that, you've never heard these words before.
Even though you have.
Even though you have. And you don't know how you're going to respond, even though you do. So you keep it just that little bit fresh and little open. Right? Otherwise, if I already know exactly how I'm going to say the line, even before you've asked me the question, then it's rote. I'm just repeating every show what I did, again and again and again. So because suppose you say the question just that fraction differently, shouldn't I respond differently? Right? But if I go by rote, then I will respond to what I've already pre-decided. Then there's nothing in the moment. I'm not creating anything in the moment. And I did try that with this play that you're referring to. It was a play called The 3 Lives of Lucy Cabral, which we were performing at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival as part of my course. So the head of my department suggested this. He said, tomorrow when you go on stage, just keep it a little alive and see what happens. And I really did that, and it changed. And I was like, oh my God, why haven't I done this all these years? It's kind of basic actually. But so then, and because we had an 8 or 10 show run, I was able to keep trying it every time, we had a show, just keeping it a little bit loose and just saying, I don't know how I'm going to respond, and maybe I did a few things differently, still within the character, still within what the director wanted in terms of moves, but just something a little more alive. And I've been doing that since.
Such a unique challenge that comes with a character that you've been playing for nearly 30 years.
Yes.
With Love Letters, is one of your most celebrated works with Rajat Kapoor. You've said about this play in the past that the more you live, the more you're able to color your character. You understand the suffering that a person goes through much more at a later date. Whereas when you're young, you're just imagining what that must be like, right? So you've often spoken about how you had to play both the younger and older version of the character. When you were younger, you had to just imagine the older life. But now, as you gotten older, the older character feels more relatable. The younger one you have to imagine. How much of your personal life, your age, your experience should infuse in a character? Should it infuse in the first place? Ideally, should every actor be able to play any character with integrity? Let's say it's a young person playing an older one. Ideally, should you just be able to play it? Or do you feel it's impossible to stop your personal life, your age, your experience from infusing into all the roles that you're playing?
I think who you are is infused into everything you're playing, right? Because every emotion is within you. Every character, I think, is somewhere within you. We have it all in us, right? Now, I may not live with, I may be a more sensitive person or quieter person, but I have anger and I have, a violent personality within me. We all have everything within us, right? So those things you have to tap into. That's all you have. When I'm playing a character, yes, I have my imagination, but I have me and what I have lived. And I bring all that to my part. That having been said, I have to be able to play every part. Whether I'm playing someone much younger than me, tomorrow if I've got to play, let's say, 100-year-old woman, I cannot believe that it's something that I wouldn't understand. I would. Similarly, if, when I was 25 and playing 60, I've seen people around me who are 60. Yes, I remember I was very naive when I was young because I thought, God, she's 60 or 65 or whatever it was. And that means she must be walking slower. the joints must be hurting, all that.
On the deathbed. So.
this older actress who I know who walked in and said, "Why are you doing this?" So I said, "What do you mean? I'm playing much older." So she said, "I'm that age. Do you see me like that at all?"
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, and it stayed with me, because that's when I realized how we go for the cliche. When you're young, you don't realize. Like when you see in college, they come playing old men of 75 with a white powder in their hair. Nobody is like that, right? So I feel I could play 25 now. I feel I could play any age, any person. I think that's the joy of being an actor. Who wants to play you all the time? It'd be hugely boring. But we have the emotional makeup of every character within us, I think.
Characters stay back with you as well? Like a bit of each character stayed back with you over the years?
I think so, somewhere. I'm not a person who takes a character home. I think it can be very dangerous, especially if you're playing someone who's emotionally very wrought. And, after the curtain call, you switch off. I go back to being
Can everyone
Shahnaz.
do it? Like, is this a choice you have? Sometimes
Yes, I think it's
subconsciously
a
it might stay back.
choice,
Okay.
but you need to do it, because we can be very influenced otherwise, and it can cause mental trauma. If I was to carry a traumatic character home, it can be very traumatic, for me in my life. So I think it's good to sometimes we romanticize that. Okay, I'm feeling my character so deeply.
I've gone to a dark place. I'm locking
all
myself in
that.
a room.
No.
Don't do
You're
it.
an actor, right? When the lights dim, curtain shuts, that's it. Switch off.
But method acting mein to bolte hai, you got to live that character.
Yeah, but you live it while you're doing the part. You don't need to. Yeah, I mean, people do it to prepare for parts.
You hear these stories of how the actors on set, they're in character the whole time.
Yeah, and look, as I said, there are no 10 things which make you an actor. There is no one school. Whatever works for you, right? Everyone, has a different way of approaching a part, and it has to work for you. That was one of the greatest things I learned when I studied, because I was doing a master's program. They were very clear. You don't like a class, you can leave. But you write a paper as to why it didn't work for you. Right? So what they were making us do by the time we finished was to formulate what works for me. Because what works for me may not work for you. And we each need to have a system of arriving at a performance that's truthful and honest on our own. I can only guide you. I can only give you the tools. You will shed some tools and find, that something that resonates with you that you will carry forward in your life. And that may be, people say, how can you work from outside in? But people can, right? People may find the voice of a character and that leads them in to who this person is.
Just one trigger point helps you.
Yeah. Or I may find the physicality and that leads me in. There's nothing right or wrong.
I also want to explore the relationship between theatre and film in Bombay in particular. A few weeks ago, I interviewed Abhishek Majumdar, and he had mentioned that in other states, there's a lot of respect theatre gets. And even regional theatre, even Marathi theatre in Bombay gets a lot of respect. But with Hindi theatre in particular, he felt there seems to be a stepping stone business in Bombay in particular, where it's viewed as a stepping stone towards the film industry. You've said in a previous interview that there is a cottage industry of theatre attitude that sometimes upsets you. You're talking about the lack of professionalism or accountability. Another interview, you spoke about the lack of government funding, and you said maybe it's not being acknowledged as an art form in its own right. Where do you think theatre stands in Bombay? Does it get the respect it deserves, or do you think it's still viewed as a stepping stone towards the film industry?
I think for certain actors, it is viewed as a stepping stone. कि अभी कुछ काम नहीं है तो चलो ना मिलके एक नाटक करते हैं, टाइम पास हो जाएगा, which I think is a good thing. What you're doing is you're practicing. It's not professional. You're practicing. So great, good for you. But I always want to ask them कि let's say you're in the middle of rehearsal and you got a film. Are you going to abandon the play because now you got a film? Those things you need to be very clear about. What is your stand on these things, as a human being? But I have also seen a lot of young actors who are doing everything today, which I think is great. So they're doing a film, they're doing a play, they're doing voice work, web series. I mean, just they're writing, they're directing, they're doing so many things. And I think that to me is great, that you are exploring all these things and you're good at, a lot of things, and why not? Again, I will say that if you chose to do a play and you committed to that play, let's say, has a week's run. In the middle of that, you got an ad film where you're going to make tons of money. You have to be committed to the play. You said yes to that. If you want out, then I will question your priorities.
This still happens?
It doesn't happen so much, but it does happen where people will, and if it's a long running play, then of course you understand. So as a producer, we will recast or double cast parts where we know an actor is going to get work. We're all going to get work at some stage. You can't hold an actor for years on it, So of course that though happens a lot. But it's still this thing, right? That if I get successful in cinema, why do I not come back to the stage? You don't see that happening internationally. Internationally, I mean, the biggest actors are constantly back doing plays.
They look forward to stints on Broadway. It's like a chip on their shoulder.
Exactly. Of course, the monies are huge, and everything is much on a much bigger scale.
But that's I don't think they also care about the Broadway money, right? They're clearly doing it for something else.
Yes, because it's a different skill set also, no? To be able to perform live. And I mean, it must be hugely stressful for them because you're a superstar, right? And everybody, the whole audience, thousands of them are coming to watch you, and you're live. And you're doing probably a difficult part. Most of them choose really very hard-hitting and complex parts to do on stage. But yet, there's that high of that live moment. Because as you said, and as Habib Tanveer said, the theatre is our medium in the sense that you can't cut me out of a scene. You can't. I rule. When that curtain opens, it's me and the audience. Yes, my job is to serve the writer, but what the audience is communicating is with me. So that you never find in cinema.
The dialogue is not with the actor in cinema.
In cinema, you can get edited. You don't know. I may be brilliant. I may think my close-up of take 2 was the best. You use take 7. It's not my best. On my close-up, you may cut away to the reaction at a moment when I felt I was, really performing well, right? It's not in my hands.
Dialogue is with the director.
It's in a movie. A theater is a director's medium. I mean, a film is a director's medium. Theater is the actor is on stage, right? So that feeling, that ownership of that is hugely appealing, I think, to a lot of actors internationally. Unfortunately here, the biggest superstars who have all started on stage, a lot of them have never come back. You don't see it in Marathi so much because there are a lot of Marathi actors, again, who are doing everything. They'll do movies, they'll do OTT, they'll do theatre. They manage, they balance. But again, it's commercial because a Marathi play will run a whole month of shows. You're getting paid for that whole run. You can run your house based on that money, right? Unfortunately, in English or Hindi theatre, it's a real struggle because, as I said earlier, the backing is not there. The financial backing is not there. So when you're struggling to survive, it's very difficult then to even hold on to people. I mean, I'm living in Bombay in some, God knows, some suburb. 6 of us are sharing one apartment. I got a job in an OTT show or a TV show. My whole, destiny is going to change based on that. How can you hold them back? Because you've got shows on. They've got to fly. My thing is this reverse, that, come back. Because you will do such a huge service to the industry if you came back, because we'll bring a lot of new audiences in. And who knows, some of them will get converted and say, Arey, I'm really enjoying watching theatre. I want to consume more of that. We'll grow. I mean, if some of these actors came back, I think it would help a lot.
They're all watching. I'll send them this video. Message has been conveyed. I guess this brings us to a wider question about the purpose of theatre. You had mentioned in a previous interview that when you were younger, and this is you reflecting back, you said you regretted not focusing as much on Gujarati theatre as much as you focus on English theatre, because English theatre was viewed a certain way. It was maybe slightly intellectual, sophisticated. Gujarati theatre, you said, was entertainment. So what is the purpose of theatre? Should it always send a message? Should it be intellectual? Should it punch up? Or can it just be mindless entertainment?
I think it can be all of the above. And I feel all need to exist together. I think that's the joy of it. If I go to I just was in London and I go mad when I go there. I watch a lot of plays, but I'll watch everything from the biggest musicals to, huge shows on the West End to tiny shows, experimental shows, 100-seater auditorium, because I love to consume it all. And I think that's what the theatre should be. There should be a Saturday when I said, I don't want to think today. I want to go and I want to laugh. I want to have a good time. And you can't look down at me saying, oh, how can you? That's not theatre. That's the unfortunate thing that people have thought, oh, theatre means it's all highbrow. That's not true. And at the same time, theatre can make you see the world differently. It can help you tap into emotions in yourself that you had chosen not to go there. And it opens something in you. It makes you look at the world in a different way. It can, because it's happening live, and our communication at that moment is almost like you're there with me, and we go on an imaginative journey together. Because if I do this, you believe I'm pouring water in a glass. You believe I'm drinking poison if it's poison. You believe it, right? At that moment. So you and I are both engaging our imagination together.
This shared imaginative reality we're creating.
I mean, they've done studies. I can't remember which university, but a study was done where they actually studied the heartbeat, the pulse of people watching something together. And all our heartbeats were matching. Because so internally we are all as one, right? When we all, if you're in a huge auditorium and 1,000 people are laughing together, I mean, that euphoria of that, you don't know the person sitting next to you, but we're all having this shared joy or shared sorrow or anger or whatever it may be. Theatre as any art form, it needs to be able to do all these things. And all these, things need to exist together. You may decide to pick up a pulp fiction book one day and something really highbrow the next. And it's beautiful that they all exist on the same shelf, right?
Yeah, I think you're making a great...
Yes, you agreed as well.
I think you're making a great case for theatre. And I hope more and more people watch this, get excited, and come watch my plays and support it. I think it's fantastic. Let's start wrapping up. Before we move into the closing questions, I would love it if you can tell me, kya banaya maine? What masterpiece these two are?
Oh, gosh. I thought this was a train for a while when you were making it.
Could be.
But yeah. Yeah, I saw it. Oh, no. Well, it looks kind of like a weapon of some sort.
A train that is a weapon.
Yeah, definitely looks like a weapon. Pistol. Yeah. And it looks to me like someone who's got their hands up and is just kind of lazing on a lounge bed of some sort. That's what it looks
exactly what I've built. You got it. You nailed it.
And this guy is like
with the weapon.
Attacking.
And I'm just lounging.
At night. Oops, I'm destroying your weapon.
My masterpiece.
So
how much it can be auctioned for?
I didn't make anything, unfortunately.
It's fine. But whatever I made, you broke also.
Yeah.
So it's gone. Okay, closing questions. What are some books, movies, role models that have strongly inspired you in your life?
No, I don't have any particular books or movies that I feel have inspired me. My biggest role model was my father. He lived the most incredible life. What I loved about him was he was still searching, even at the age of 90, for the next project that he would immerse himself in. He had a column actually in a newspaper which was called Life Begins at 80. And it's the way I would like to live out the rest of my life. Squeezing it dry, always dreaming, always imagining what I can do next. How can I leave an impact, greater impact with what I do? And also through him, I learned kindness and compassion, empathy. Through both my parents, I learned those things. And those are my mantras of how I try to live my life now.
Hold on to the thought about impact. We'll come there. But before that, who do you think is the greatest actor of all time and why?
Gosh, how can you choose one? Not possible.
You can choose 5.
I love Judi Dench. She's a huge inspiration to me. I love watching her. I love her voice. I love her persona. I mean, I just love what she represents as a human being. She's almost blind now, and yet she's performing away. She's had huge sorrows in her life, yet she's always joking and full of joy and masti. And she's an incredible actress, both theatre and film. So yeah, actually, if I had to choose one person, I would say it's her.
Greatest film of all time and why?
Greatest film? How can you choose like that? Yeah.
Okay, pick 5. It's fine. 10, no problem.
No, I mean,
let's say I'm a student of filmmaking and you're saying, okay, watch this one film, it will teach you a lot.
Again, depends on which kind of student you are, but
The Restless One.
But in an Indian context, films like Sholay are just, to me, incredible for the fact that I think it was the first film that I ever watched multiple times. I'd never done that before, never even dreamt of doing that before. And there was just something about the way that story was told and the way that every character had a journey and every character is...
I have no idea what's happening.
What are they doing?
I don't even know what's upstairs. Bowling alley? I don't know.
So I think it is so well etched as a film with every character having their place in that story in spite of it being a multi-starrer.
Is that what makes a movie have a high repeat value? Like what? Not every movie is able to achieve this quality that you can keep watching again and again.
There's another fabulous movie called Birdcage. Have you ever seen it?
No.
It's
Birdman I watched.
It's very funny. Go home and watch it. It's one of those films that I can watch again and again because it's just so silly and it makes me laugh.
So what makes it, like what gives it repeat value is the question.
I think it's just... either it can be a character that you have to keep watching that person again and again because... for me, Birdcage is just, if I'm feeling low, I will put on Birdcage and I just feel good about life again. It's one of those, something has to happen. Or it's just a great performance that, I think a lot of Meryl Streep's work. I mean, her French Lieutenant's Woman is just outstanding. Sophie's Choice, outstanding. All these, as when you're growing up and want to be an actor and you watch these incredible performances, they're so inspiring.
I quite like Kramer vs. Kramer. I don't know if the crying scene is from that movie you were talking about.
No,
maybe not.
I can't remember. It's not Kramer vs. But yeah, Kramer, what a film, yeah. And what incredible performances from both of them. A lot of the De Niro work is just outstanding. Raging Bull was one of my favorite. I mean, these are all, they seem almost cliches, but, I think they're cliches for a reason. Dead Poets Society. Just I'm a mush. I love feel good films, and anything that just makes me feel good about being a human being and about being alive. Those are the things that I'm drawn to.
We parked the question aside about impact, so we have to go there. What would you like your legacy to be? How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered for many things. I'm selfish.
Let's list all of them.
I think definitely as an actor, if I was able to impact anyone because of what I did or because of my work, that's all that one can ask for as a performer. And because I've been doing a lot for the next generations now, I work with kids. I try and teach as much as I can. I really, really want to work with the elderly now. So, all these things, I just feel I hope I've left enough for other people to enjoy the joy of theatre that I have experienced. I want to share that with as many people as I can. For me, that would be the greatest impact if I influenced even one young kid to take it up and feel this, go on this incredible ride that I've had. I would have done something great.
I think so too. I think you're underselling it. If they ever make a Mount Rushmore for theatre in Bombay, I'm sure you will be on it. Final question. In the movie Rockstar, your character says, "हम समझते हैं, हम जिंदगी को जानते हैं, लेकिन जिंदगी हमें surprise दे देती है." You seem to have played characters that seem to have a profound understanding of zindagi and the meaning of it. So I have to ask you, what is the meaning of life? Shehnaz Patel.
I think it's the same thing. I'm also searching as to what am I here for? I really believe it's to serve others. I just feel that, I believe strongly in the joy that I can give other people, whether it's through a theatre program that I do. I mean, like Abhishek has worked under us in a writer's program, and then seeing his career take off internationally, to me, that gives me great joy that I knew I had a part in that process. Other than that, I think we just have to live it, right? We have to make the most of it. We have to be constantly curious, change, learn, grow. People. Everything comes down to people, the relationships that we have and hold and cherish. That's what we remember. I think that's one of the great things about theatre, is that, for that period of time, when a whole bunch of actors that you didn't know come together and we're in rehearsals together, whether you're, 30 years younger than me or 30 years older than me, it doesn't matter. We become a little family. And like that, over my career, I've built a lot of little families. I think that's the greatest joy, the fun and the joy that we have with each other.
Sounds great to me. Serving people is the meaning of life, putting it on a t-shirt. Ma'am, if people wish to connect with you, find out more about you or support theatre, what is the best way to find you or your work?
They can just contact me on my email. It's Shehnaz Patel, SHERNAZPATEL @gmail.com.
Ma'am, thank you so much. This has been an honor for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
This is No Time. If you like what you see, then do hit subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify, rate 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. This project takes a lot of my time, money, and effort. It's my full-time job now. So if you'd like to see it continue, please consider making a donation on Patreon or Anchor. You can join as a member on YouTube. You can buy super thanks on YouTube, or you can leave gifts on Instagram Reels. If not through monetary channels, do consider sharing these episodes, leaving your likes and comments. All forms of engagement, they really go a long way. For other forms of love and support, you can follow this channel on Instagram or Twitter, or follow me personally.